Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's another episode here with Abdullah Konte of Win Sports. Here kind of to talk about the combine results, right? Like, I know that there is the old linemen that still are performing, and so it's not completely over, but at the same time, this video is more about talking about the guys that we feel that are probably going to be at the top of that draft, at that number 7 spot, specifically. And though, they did just cut Tyler Biotish and should be looking for offensive linemen, I don't think that there's any offensive linemen that they're really considering at that number 7 spot. I mean, it's possible, but just based off all the interviews that they did over the week, I just don't think that they're going to be going in that direction. I think that they're gonna eventually probably draft a lineman maybe in on the third day of the draft, possibly. But for now, I think for the most part, it looks like they're going to be focusing on other positions overall. So it's been really entertaining just to see the draft and see all these guys that are coming out and competing. And to be honest, it's been probably one of the more interesting combines. I don't know, maybe it's because last year they weren't drafting in the top, and then the year before that, even though they were in the top 5, everybody knew it was kind of going to be quarterback, so we weren't paying attention too heavily, at the combine and some of the guys that they could be getting at the top. But to me, it just seemed like there was a lot of really strong standout performances. And essentially, I did this top 7, 7 for 7, video about a month ago, something like that, where I just went through, 7 players that I thought would be available for the Commanders at that number 7 spot, and who I just thought would be a likely fit. Now, I would say that, like, the numbers have changed, like the people have changed overall, and some people have rised up in their stock, and some people have fallen. Or now that we know who the offensive and defensive coordinators are, we have more of an idea of what they maybe could be targeting a little bit more. So for me, I just kind of thought I would do it again, but they basically just do like a version 2 post combine edition. So before I get into that, like, I just kind of wanted to talk about 3 under the radar players that I thought really, really performed well, and maybe could be people that they can get later, either in day 2 or day 3. There's not, obviously they don't have a ton of picks, losing that that second and that 4th round pick due to trades. But there was a few guys that really played well. I know we're going to be talking about the top of the draft, but there's a few guys that I thought like really shined that they would probably consider at some point. And the first guy is Traydon Stukes from Arizona, the corner slash safety. I was not really aware of this kid. I think you guys probably saw that I had done a video with Josh Taylor of A to Z Sports before the Senior Bowl, and he had mentioned him to me, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go check him out. And man, like, he has some of the better film out there. For those who are looking for that kind of safety, corner, nickel kind of position, this guy can do it all. And he went out there, he's about 6'1", 6'2", and he ran a 4.3, which was really surprising to me because I knew he was quick. I just did not know he would be that fast. So he's somebody that, like, I don't know how far up the ranks he would go. I've seen some mocks have had him in the 2nd round, some in the 3rd, some in the 4th. He could be that pick at 71, depending on what they do in the 1st pick. But you try to get somebody else. They clearly want to upgrade their secondary, and I think with a guy like Durante Jones, who's probably going to be working from the back towards the end, when it comes to his coaching, he probably is focusing a lot on the DBs in this draft, and there's a lot of good safeties in this draft. We saw the numbers. Some crazy. This is probably the fastest safety group I've ever seen at the combine. It was out of control, all the numbers that we saw. But Traydon Stukes has the size, and the speed to play corner and safety. I think you could play him at either position. He probably better is suited at safety. I mean, I think any corner or any DB has more longevity at safety than at corner. Corners is such a difficult position to play. But Traydon Stukes was great, and I think that he's just somebody to watch out for. Second guy, Eli Stowers, was a tight end out of Vanderbilt. Now, I've been very low on the tight end class. Just based upon all the just trying to catch up on film and watching people play. Obviously there's Kenyon Sadiq, who great player, had crazy numbers, but the guy who was keeping up with him was Stowers. Obviously I think he broke the record of the highest vert out of any tight end ever. He kind of has Jimmy Graham vibes to me, like a basketball player on the football field. But he's very athletic. Like, I was watching his, film, and his junior film, actually, I felt like was even better than his film from last year. But I don't know if he would be at 71. From what I saw, he looks more like a second rounder. And so this could be one that, like, if they were to trade back and accumulate another second round pick or something, maybe they could go this route. I don't know if they're going to be able to get a tight end in free agency. We already heard about Kyle Pitts being franchise tagged, or is going to be franchise tagged. So there's going to be probably a bidding war for the remainder guys like Isaiah Likely and Chig. If they do decide to go into draft, I don't think there's a lot of great tight ends. I think these two, Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers, could be those two guys. Now, the last guy in this under the radar category that I'm talking about is Lorenzo Styles. And this is obviously Sonny Styles' brother. I watched a lot of Ohio State film. I think most people who are evaluating the draft this year watched a lot of, Ohio State film, considering how much talented players they have, especially in the top 10 with Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese. They have so many players that are going to get drafted from that defense this year. And Lorenzo Styles, I just didn't know much about him. But as I was watching, I mean, he's pretty good. I mean, he's going to be probably a third day guy. Like, he's not going to, even though he ran a 4.2, I don't think that's going to bolster him up into, like, a second day pick or anything like that, or a first round or anything like that. I think he's probably more going to be in the 4th to 7th round. But this is a good safety class. And if you are looking for a safety and are not able to get one in that first or third round, in the later, rounds, you could maybe pick somebody up like him. Having that kind of speed was really impressive. Clearly the genetics are strong in that family. So I just thought Lorenzo Styles was one that was impressive. I liked his film too. Like, it wasn't just the combine. It was the combine plus the film watching this week that really was like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is somebody that they should consider. So, but now I'm going to get into this, 7 players out of 7. And I like to do an honorable mention of 3 players just to kind of round out, 10 players to be looking out for. And the 3 players that are in the honorable mention this category, or this time around, are basically the receivers of this first round group, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, and Mekhi Lemon. And it's mainly just because I just don't think they're going to go receiver. Like, they clearly interviewed all these guys. All these guys seem interested too. I mean, the one thing I did a tweet with Mekhi Lemon's interview when he was on Demon Time, essentially about him talking about Jaden, and Jade just, everybody, all these young guys, these young receivers love Jaden. We heard Tevin McMillan talk about Jaden last year. We've heard these guys all mention that they would love to play for the Commanders, or they have some, appreciation for the Jaden Daniels specifically. We heard Mekhi Lemon say it. We heard Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson talk about their interviews with the Commanders. It's clear that young receivers want to play here. I mean, we've seen Ayuk. We think Ayuk's going to come, and he's been clamoring to get to this team since last season, before last season. So, essentially, I think people really, Jaden, whatever Jaden has is very, magnetic, I guess. He just, people want to gravitate towards him. I think they see the potential and the opportunity to play with a great quarterback. And so, those 3 guys, they're obviously in consideration. I think that based upon how everything went I don't think that they'll be the pick at 7. Cardinal Tate, ran like a 4.5. He's not known to be very fast. I think his tape and him on the field is much faster than he does on a 40. And then Tyson didn't, participate, which I think is going to hurt his stock because he is already known as injury prone. Makai Lemon, I don't believe ran either. And so I just don't see them being the pick for after everything that we saw from the other guys, right? So I'll go into the top 7. Number 7 for me that I have is Mansour Delane. And, he was in my honorable mention last time I did this. This time I think he's moved up a little bit more. It looks like they are considering corner. He looks to be the number 1 corner. I think it was him and Jermon McCoy, and with McCoy not also being able to test at the combine because of his injury, it just seems like that kind of pushed Mansour Delane ahead. Now, Mansour Delane I don't think ran at the combine either, but he has great measurables. He's over 6 feet, has really, really good tape as well. It was a great player at Virginia Tech and then transferred to LSU. He's really somebody who I think could play at the slot, but also on the outside, right? Like he has great coverage skills. And so, if they really are trying to bolster this defense, and we don't know what they're going to do with Lattimore yet. I mean, it's kind of weird that Biotish got cut and Lattimore's still on the team. We don't know what they're doing, if they're trying to, is it possible to restructuring? I don't know. I mean, it just seems weird that they haven't made that decision if they are making decision on other people. But essentially, if they do decide to, upgrade their corner room, Mansour Delane would be the number 1 pick in regards to that. And I think he'll be there just based upon how everybody else performed at the combine. My number 6 guy is Ruben Bain. And this is kind of interesting because I feel like it's possible. And what I'll say too is that these rankings are more based upon, are these guys going to be there also? It's not just who's the best player for them. It's about fit. It's about, is this guy going to be actually there at that number? Some of these guys might be lower on the list because they're just not going to be there, but at the same time with Bain, it's kind of interesting because I don't know what's going on with Bain. There's so many people who love him. There's so many people who want to knock the arm length thing. I think that he's one of the best edge rushers in this draft. And you heard Daniel Jeremiah say that, when it comes to the top 3 edge rushers, it's a less than 50% chance that they would be there at 7. And he said this when he was talking to JP Finley on his show. I don't know if he's going to be at that spot, but the way everybody else kind of tested, he didn't test, he didn't compete, I guess, when it comes to the combine. So people can knock him for that. He did do his tests on his arms, and it was one of the shortest, that they've seen for a D lineman. And is that going to really play a role? I mean, we heard Adam Peters kind of make a joke of like, that doesn't matter. And I think that people can just see this guy is a beast and is somebody who's worthy of grabbing. So I still think he's probably going to go in that top, in the top 7. So is it possible he's there? Sure. And I think that they should really, really consider it if he's there, but I just don't know if he'll be there, right? So that's who I had at 6. At 5, I have David Bailey, who was previously my number 1 guy last time I did this. And the main reason why he's not number 1 now is not because they don't want him and not because he's not the best player here. It's mainly because he's tested so well that I just don't think he's going to be there. I think David Bailey probably tested well enough to be the number 2 pick. I really do, especially with Jermaine Johnson getting traded from the Jets to Tennessee. It opens up a spot for them to go with an edge rusher, and he's the best pass rusher in this draft. I don't know how great he's going to set the edge when it comes to run defense, but pass rushing ability, he's the best. He has the best moves. He showed that with the drills at the combine, and then him running a 4.5. I mean, we got running backs who are struggling to run that, so essentially, David Bailey is a monster. I think that as much as the Commanders, if he's there when the Commanders are picking, he should probably be the pick. Is he going to be there? I just don't think so anymore. I think he's played well enough to put himself in the top 4 consideration, and I actually think that if I had to put money on it, I think he's going to end up being the 2nd pick. So then my number 4 player is Sonny Styles, and he wasn't on my list at all last. And it wasn't mainly because I never liked Sonny Styles. I just thought that he would probably be more of a trade down candidate, and his name has just slowly been rising the charts. I mean, I think the first time we heard about him really being in this discussion at 7, I think Daniel Jeremiah first had him at number 7 in his first mock that he did. And yeah, I mean, look, what Sonny Styles did, had a 10 point, a perfect RAS score on the athletic score. He ran a 4.4, 43-inch vertical. Like, he did things. They compared him to Calvin Johnson, on NFL Network, and he's a linebacker. And with the big hole that we believe will happen at linebacker if they decide to go away from Bobby, which, I think we're getting vibes that that's probably what's going to happen. They need to replace him. And why not replace a guy like that with Sonny Styles, who's known to not miss tackles ever, which was actually one of Bobby's strong suits. Bobby might have been a liability in coverage, but he didn't miss tackles very often. That was one thing that he was excellent at. And being another guy who kind of plays similar in that regard and has more athleticism, who was a safety before, that'll be able to, cover running backs, why not? So Sonny Styles is my number 4 player. He's an absolute freak of nature when it comes to athleticism. And I think he'll be there. I think there's a possibility that the Giants, it sounds like maybe the Giants at 5 is the biggest threat for Sonny Styles. Maybe, the Cleveland Browns at 6. I don't know if he'll go top 4, but it sounds like he is in that top 7 conversation. I think he's possible to be there, but he did test well enough that, there are some other teams that are going to be looking for a team like the Giants and John Harbaugh, who's had strong linebacker play. When he was in Baltimore, he might be considering this, and that would be a great addition to that Giants defense. So number 3 is Arvell Reese, who I believe I had number 5 last time I did this, and it was mainly because I was kind of falling out. I've had this weird trajectory with Arvell Reese where, when I first heard about him, I loved him. Then I started watching him more, and then I fell out of love with him because I felt like people were saying he was an edge, and I wasn't convinced that he was an edge, or I didn't feel like he had the best edge rushing, or I think his edge rushing ability was incredible, but it seems like he really wants to play linebacker, and it's like, what position is he? Can he impact games the way that Bailey does, the way that Bain does? But then when Durante Jones was hired, I fell back in love with Reese because I was watching more of how I expect Durante Jones's defense to be, and it's based upon what Brian Flores does. It could obviously be a little different, but if it's anything similar to that, Reese would be dynamic in this defense. The way he rushes the passer, the way he plays off the edge, the way he can play at linebacker, he would be excellent. They like to be aggressive in that type of defense. Reese is all about that. He performed well I think Sonny Styles maybe outshined him a little bit, but at the same time, he performed super well too, that I think everybody's considering, if you're going best player available, that they believe both Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese are in the top 5. And, I think that we saw a little shakeup with the trade between Tennessee and New York, that it's possible that Reese might be sliding. We saw that Daniel Jeremiah had paired Reese to the Commanders in his last mock draft. So, and I'm seeing that more. It used to be that it was this Reese at 2, Reese at 2, Reese at 2. More of the mock drafts we're seeing is that Reese is falling down, maybe to 4 to 7 to 8 range, kind of like that. He's falling a little bit. Not to say that he's not a good player. I think some of these guys are just coming up and playing really well. People like David Bailey, like Sonny Styles. But Arvell Reese is my number 3, and I almost put him even higher. It's just more, the only reason why I didn't is because I still think he's probably not going to be there. But if he is there, I think he might be the number 1, the one that makes the most sense to just send a ticket in, just get him. He's going to be dynamic in this defense. He plays, obviously there's a comparisons to Micah Parsons. I think he might not play exactly like Micah, but plays similar. And, obviously we know about Dan Quinn and Micah's success, that him being paired with these guys, it could be a match made in heaven. So he's my number 3 player. Number 2 I have is Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs was number 2 on my last time that I did this. And Caleb, I still think that Caleb is one of the best players in the draft. You could say he's the best defensive player in the draft, and you hear a lot of people say that, and it's just the positional value. I think it did hurt him a little bit by not competing, because it was like all these other safeties competed, like Dylan Thieneman, killed it out there. And I'm sure that maybe he didn't want to compete. Maybe he's not a 4-3 guy. Maybe he's more of a 4-4 guy. Didn't want to really show that, and maybe he's just like, hey, I'll prove it in my pro day. Let the film talk. I still love the guy. He's still my favorite player in this draft. I think that he is. I think the biggest thing about him is that he might not make the biggest splash plays like some of these other guys will, like when it comes to Ruben Bain and Arvell Reese, but I think the thing about him is that he has the highest floor. I think whoever picks Caleb Downs is going to have a Pro Bowl level safety for like 10 to 12 years, right? Like, I think it's just, if you don't want to mess up the pick and you just want to get a blue chip player, just get Caleb Downs. Like, just don't think about it. I think people are overthinking the positional value thing. It's the same thing that happened with Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton was supposed to be a top 5 pick, and sure, he tested a little poorly at the combine, which is maybe why Caleb Downs didn't test. But he tested poorly at the combine and ended up dropping to, like, I think 14. And yeah, I mean, he's probably the best safety in the game right now, and he's he impacts the game also. We saw Derwin James. The same thing happened to Derwin James, and I just feel like this is one of those times where it's like, just you have a lot of holes. As you know, the Commanders have a lot of holes. Just pick somebody is going to clean up one of those holes, like, for sure. I mean, a guy like Arvell Reese, you believe is going to clean up the hole, but you don't know. You're not quite sure, especially with him kind of figuring out his position. Caleb Downs is a guy, you just grab him. He's a plug-and-play guy. He's going to be great for this team, and it is at a position of need. But what I will say is that there's a lot of good safeties in this class that they could pass up and go with somebody else so that they can get, a different safety in the third or the fifth. And but I will say that, like, I think Caleb will be there at 7, just based upon how all these guys kind of push themselves up, which makes people have to get pushed down. So I think Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese might get pushed down a little bit. I think Caleb will potentially be there at 7. And I just think that, like, yeah, man, if it plays out that all these other guys I mentioned are kind of gone, Caleb seems like the guy that, like, yo, if he's there, just grab him, right? The number 1 player, which is just kind of crazy because I've been so defense heavy on this draft since the beginning that they have to go defense. They have to go defense. They have to go defense. But with so much momentum and everything that we heard from him and this player this week, and all the people talking about him, I mean, it's hard to not think about this being a strong consideration. And it's Jeremiah Love. And Jeremiah Love was number 5 on my list last time I did this. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I think that if they go crazy in free agency, then you have the reason to do it. Because when you think about pairing Jaden Daniels with Jeremiah Love, it sounds incredible, right? And we've seen the teams that have been able to get a dynamic running back paired with a quarterback have done really well. If you think about it, and I think it was Rico from Street Scores that was saying that, like, if you put this player like Jaden Daniels on a team with Bijan, I mean, aren't the Atlanta Falcons considered to be like a favorite to go to the Super Bowl? You know what I mean? Like, I just think that you get a guy like that and it changes the offense completely. I mean, we've seen how much Saquon has helped Jalen Hurts, right? We've seen that Jared Goff has benefited from having Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Like, these guys are dynamic players that completely change the team. And if you look at it, like, when Saquon went to the Giants, they had no people around him, which is why it didn't work out. But this offense is already kind of there. It didn't play super well last year, but we believe that Jaden has everything needed. We believe that this O-line, despite losing Biotish, it is, I think, still a good O-line. I think they have a plan on what they're going to do at center, but it was a good O-line last year. And so for those who don't want Love, yeah, I get it, because the fact of the matter is you had Bill, who rushed for 800 yards last year. Why go running back? It's not a high position of value. There's a lot of needs on this team. Why go spend more on the offense when you have so many problems on the defense? I think you can rectify that in free agency, and we're going to see a lot of change on what this team needs after a week or two of free agency and how that goes. But when we're talking about the best players, if you're talking about best player available, how many players are you putting in front of Jeremiah Love, honestly, when it comes to just best player available? I mean, maybe one or two. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was worthy of winning the Heisman last year. You know what I mean? He was that good of a player. He's been that good of a player for a while. So, and when you think about his big playability, think about what they're trying to do, changing the offense wise with Blau. There's so much that can happen, right? There's so much that can happen here. I just think that it's also, is he going to be available? There is talk about Tennessee potentially wanting to take Love at 4. It's more likely that Love is going to be available at 7. And so if you know that going into free agency, personally, to me, this is where I start to make sure I'm signing players and getting my team to a point where I can just pick the best player available when it comes to the draft. You know, you don't want to go into it with some major hole and you feel like you're put in a corner and have to draft. Like, say you have to draft an edge because you didn't address edge in free agency. Like, I feel like you really need to address every element of the team that's strong enough that you're like, hey, we're going to draft obviously to add, but with the team that we had, you know, put together right now, we feel comfortable going into any fight with that. So, I mean, I it's hard not to get excited watching Jeremiah Love's tape and thinking about how he can open up the offense for Jaden. Jaden needs more help, and I think so many people are thinking about it from a receiver perspective. Look, I think the Ayuk thing's going to happen. He has Terry. I think that they add a tight end in free agency. That leaves the running game. And I think the running game is good enough with Bill by himself, but thinking about having Love with Bill, that just sounds crazy to me. And most of the teams that we saw had success in the last 2 years have had two backs that have really been their bell cows to the offense. So that's my list. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys completely disagree, that's completely fine. I'm curious of what you guys' lists are. So if you got time, give me your ranking. I'd love to hear what your ranking is as the top 7 players to be selected, potentially at number 7. Who's your number 1 guy and why? Would love to hear from everybody. I'm a big person on conversation. Like I've always said before, I am a sports junkie, just a guy who likes talking sports. My opinion doesn't matter more than anyone else's. So anybody who wants to jump in and tell me your opinion, I'd love to hear it. So thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it here at Win Sports for sure. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more of us. And we'll talk to you soon.